Hey everybody. I need to make a centerpiece for a tea party that I am hosting. It's with a scrapbooking group, and I have two 6-foot tables that I have to decorate. So I wanted to try making playing card roses. I didn't know if there was going to be any video out, and apparently there are. And there are several different ways of doing it. And so I'm going to take you through what I did and what my experience was. So, first off, I got playing cards from Amazon. Now, they're not expensive playing cards. I wanted to make sure I had enough in case I had made mistakes. And so I got a pack. I thought I only got red back cards, but apparently the set was 6 blue back and 6 red back cards. So there it is. I have tons of cards now, so I'll be doing lots of artwork with that. Anyway, so one of the videos that I watched used glue. One made roses out of full, use the card entirely as a petal, whereas I'm going to be cutting the card down. One used staplers and hot glue. So I tried different ways and eventually came up with a way that seemed to work. I liked the way it looked, and so I'm going to walk you through it. So basically, and I'm really, really sorry that the video, I was out of range for the video, but that's only really in the beginning. And I'm keeping this full length because this way you can zip through wherever you want to see what you want. Eventually, my hands come up into the center frame. Um, so you, they have you cut the card and then fold or use some way to roll the card around. Now, these cards are so inexpensive that after doing this with the burnisher, you've taken off quite a bit of the varnish or the covering that's on it, and the paper can rip really easy. I found that this was the best way to do it, and instead of keeping the card whole, whereas you would have 4 petals on it and try to wrap it around it, I found that either doing it with a half of a card or making it into 4 separate pieces was the best way to do it. When I'm cutting the card and making it into petals, that you do you, whatever kind of speaks to you. Sometimes I had to adjust it for whatever reason. I had a bunch of different things available. I had pokey tools, I had the burnisher, I had a pair of pliers, a pair of round nose pliers, and I tried different ways of doing it, but the best way was using the burnishing tool to get it rounded and to sort of break down the fibers in it. And depending upon at what point you're starting. So when you start off, you want to do a centerpiece that you can wrap around. You can wrap the other petals around the other pieces of card. They folded it and then cut triangles out of it. There's a bunch of different ways that people cut depending upon what kind of cards they had. And this was, for the most part, everything I did for all of them, whether I was making a bud rose or whether I was making a full-blown rose. And so the most important part was getting it to be flexible. Now, as you can see, this is how you start with a bud. I think I end up taking more off so that it's more flexible. You almost have to get where you can manipulate the card into a tube. And there is one out, and I'll list the videos that I looked. I'll put them down in my show more, and you can quickly go see. Some of them were very good. Some of them were they just give you the idea. And for the most of the time, anybody who's making these things, they really they just need to see and try it. You have to do it and manipulate it your way. Now see how I'm folding it up. Again, I'm sorry that it's out of range right now. So I need to make it so that I can get in there and fold it up so I cut away. And being that I had so many packs of cards, it really didn't matter. And then you turn it and fold it onto each other. And I think I was thinking about when I've seen roses and how I've made roses from fabric and ribbon. And I was trying to manipulate it so that I could work it that way. Eventually, I found that I needed to have it where the petal was starting to turn. I think I do that here, where I'm turning it out because I want it to look like the petals are starting to open up. This is, right now, I'm just doing the center so that was nice and tight. And then pulling the other one out. So I'm going to turn it now. Turn it out so it looks like it's opening up. And this, you have to be careful with this really inexpensive playing cards. They rip real easy. Some of the cards you'll see, when the close-ups, you'll see that they have the rip in it. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's for decoration. It's not like, I know that if you go on Etsy, you can find some shops that are selling these, and there's like one that I guess maybe it's for a dozen, and they're like expensive, very expensive. I don't know why, but there it is. So I'm pulling them together, making like a bud on it, trying to get it to look like the center. Now, it's pretty. This was, how can I say this? It can be very big at this point and difficult to fold the card over on it, which is why I went to making individual petals eventually and attaching it. So putting on some hot glue, and you have to be careful with that because the hot glue comes through the card. See, and every so often I go out of frame because the camera's so far back. So we're going to put hot glue in there. But I'm going to try to get this to feel like it's a petal over a petal. Now, if you look real close at a rose as it's coming apart, well, depending upon the rose, as it's opening up, the petals sort of overlap each other. And eventually, that's what I started doing with this. Initially, I tried doing exactly what other people did, and I had to adjust and adapt because my fingers don't work the way everybody else's does. So see, I'm trying to get it to where it's going to unfold. Then we're going to put some glue in there and then put the other one inside that. I'm using the pliers to, because it gets hot, that the heat transfers through the playing card. It's really, they're really cheap playing cards. So you have to be careful you don't burn yourself. And I'm using Gorilla Glue hot glue in my little teeny tiny hot glue gun. I'm just going to let that hold that. I sort of hoped that having it ooze out a little bit would hold it. There were times it just seemed like the plastic was sort of cooling off the glue, and then the plastic wouldn't stick. Now, for everything else that I was doing, it was fine. I must have gotten enough of the plastic off, or the coating. It's more like a coating. And it came apart a lot easier in this one than in the other ones, and I have no idea why. I was just having a tough time at this point. And this string is going to be everywhere. Okay. So trying to spread the hot glue. And you can see that I keep trying to keep it in frame. Now, I know if I push that, it would break. So I'm trying to be very careful with it. And you can see some ripped areas in the center one. I think if you, I don't know, I didn't try soaking them. I'm wondering if you soak them, cut them out, soak them, and then tried to do the manipulation of them. Maybe that would come out a little easier. So see how, now this is your center. Now rose is going to be pretty big. And then holding it, now that's the hardest part here, is just getting it to cool off enough to hold it. Yeah, I'm sorry about it taking so long, but you can fast forward. I'll have timestamps in the bottom. You can follow along. See, I think that one is ripped, but it's not too bad. It's not a problem, seriously. Especially if you're doing a Mad Hatter's, which is what this is. This is going to be a Mad Hatter centerpiece. I don't think anybody else is doing anything like that. I think they're really sort of embracing the British tea, whereas I'm kind of going with the Alice in Wonderland theme. Now, this is half of a card, and I'm trying, see, this is where I notice that it's not, and I'm desperately trying to get it to hold on. I think rubber bands would have been good just to hold it, because it seemed to be not sticking very well. I'm trying everything here, and it's not working. And at one point I realized that, it's okay if it's starting to unravel, if it's opening up. Maybe it's probably meant to be. Oh, and this sort of like had overage that was, I think, getting in the way, and I was afraid it was going to be too big. So taking half, it looks like little wings. I'm going to curl it. See, it ripped. That's how real inexpensive these cards are. But I think that's better. I think the really expensive cards would be so much more difficult. All right, so what you want to do is where there's a V in the bud. So there's that line there. So you want to make sure that the new bud, the new petal, is going to cover that. And we're holding it for a little while. And then I'm going to go over and do the other one. And what I found is if you cut the bottom of the petal where the two meet, and you create a V, it makes a little cup. So keeping the top part away from the center and the bottom part towards the center, it sort of makes it bulbous. And here again, it's like, just hurry up and wait for the darn stuff. It shall be getting a little better, I promise. See, I can't even sit and hold it. I got to be doing something because I'm getting bored too. Oh yeah, and a pen. I use that pen to help roll too, and in some cases it was helpful. So let's get rid of the garbage. I'm going to be doing a video of the centerpiece itself. I bought some things to put in it, and hopefully you'll come and see how I use the roses. That'll come up next. So when that's ready, I think in next week it should be ready, or depending upon when you're seeing this. It'll be in a playlist. I think I'll call it the Tea Party playlist, or Alice's Tea Party, Mad Hatter's Tea Party. I don't know what to call it. Let me know in the comments what I should call it. All right. We're getting there. We're getting there. A little bit more just to kind of hold it. I don't know why I decided to do that. I could have left it. But see where that V is right there? That's where you want to have another petal covering that. In the center of the petal should cover that V, and that's how you go around. It'll become more apparent in a minute. All right, next one. Other thing I think that would be really good to do is to get a bunch of these prepared and ready to attach. It might help. It might be helpful. So we're going to make the center, and so that's mostly for the center of the petal. And then you want to use the other one on the top to make it go around, to make it curl out. So trying to center it, and for me to see it, I end up going out of frame, and I appreciate that you're hanging in there, and I know how frustrating it is. I know it drives me crazy watching videos that do that. Oh, it's horrible. Okay, so there's the V, and it's going right in the center of the petal, or thereabouts. When you got hot glue, you got to take what you can. There we go. At one point, there's going to be so much bulk, you're not going to be able to use the two attached petals. So you have to pull it apart and then attach them. And I found that was the easiest thing to do than to keep them together after the center bud gets so big. So you have to use separate petals. And I think each one is going to be different because every single one was done differently. See, now I'm not concerned about making sure the top gets done. I'm trying to make it so that the center stays attached, but I think even then I end up slipping the petals into each other. That's not bad. We'll let that dry. And we're going to go back to making some petals here. Let me move this up. So I've sped these two up, well, the next two clips up, because you get the idea by this time of how to put the rose together, and I think that's the most important part of this. And it really depends upon how the cards are working for you, the kind of cards you have, whether or not you can manipulate them. As I said, I have a really cheap kind of cards. They have a coating rather than a lamination, so they were easy to burnish and move and manipulate. And so, depending upon what the way you want your petals to look, I suggest looking at pictures of roses as the ones that you were trying to emulate or make them look. So this is really sped up a lot. I'm sorry. But I would imagine you're bored with watching me cut petals and glue. The only thing I want to say is I'm going to have a playlist. I would love a suggestion of what you would like me to call it. I'm thinking um, Annie's Tea Party or Mad Hatter's Tea Party, I guess, or just Tea Party. I don't know. It's going to be decorations. So this really took, I think it was like 45 minutes of this, and I brought it down to narrow it down a little bit. They're going to be used in making a centerpiece, and the centerpiece will have some other things in it. I'm kind of going along those lines. And then there's a second one I'm making that will be really a lot like the Tea Party. Um, Similar, but this is more of the Queen of Hearts stuff, I suppose. I don't know. I just make it up as I go along, and you're with me. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I started. I started with doing staples because I thought that would be easier. I found, you could do it, but you need an inch or a half inch wide stapler to be able to accomplish it so that you could fit it in. And you want to make sure that it is with the long part of the staple facing out. I think I bring a rose up to show you how I first started doing it. Um, there's to some degree, that was okay for starting out to get the idea. But once I started working with it, I preferred using the glue. Uh, Let me show you here. So there's a staple right there. You can see it. And there's one. And then there's one further down. And there's the inch wide. See, it can go down, but you really have to have really good finger dexterity to get in there and hold it. And if it doesn't work, then you've got all these holes and you've got to pull it out. And see, it's the center depends. It's not a big deal. You can always cover that if it really bothers you. Hope you enjoyed it. Watch the photos of the close-ups, and you'll get a really good idea of what was going on. I appreciate you being here. I thank you so much for your subscription, and I look forward to showing you the rest of this nonsense that's going to happen. Oh, and I attached cuticle sticks to them, and that's how I'm going to use them. Ta-ta for now.